podcast. So welcome everyone. We are live here podcast at Spreaker, also on Instagram, and we're going to look at a question on hepatoblastoma from osmosis. So let's get right to it. A 2-year-old boy comes to the clinic because he hasn't been eating well for the past 2 weeks. His mother says that he has been sleeping much more lately and that he seems to get full after eating only a few bites of food. He has not traveled recently and he has had no sick contacts. Family history is significant for a total colectomy in his father when he was 16 years old. His 12-year-old first cousin has started getting yearly flexible sigmoidoscopies. His temperature is 38.1, pulse 86, respirations are 22, and his blood pressure is 108/66. Physical examination shows a large palpable mass in the right upper quadrant of the abdomen. And laboratory studies show an elevated alpha-fetoprotein level. An abdominal computed tomography scan is performed, as shown below. You can't see this, but the scan, I'm going to try and turn this around on, I don't know if anyone can see this on Instagram, but here is the scan. I'm going to turn this around and we're going to continue with the MCQ. So there is the question stem, and we're going to have to think about the most likely diagnosis here. And the choices are A, Burkitt lymphoma, B, gallbladder adenocarcinoma, C, hepatoblastoma. Maybe you can guess it's that one because that's the subject of this conversation. D, pyloric stenosis, or E, Wilms tumor. So the answer, as you know, is hepatoblastoma. But the major takeaway here is that hepatoblastoma is a primitive tumor that is the most common primary liver tumor in young children, occurring most often before the age of 5. They occur much more often in children who suffer from Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome and familial adenomatous polyposis, and screening may be regularly carried out in these conditions. So what if you had thought that it was Burkitt's lymphoma? Burkitt lymphoma is a B-cell lymphoma caused by a T814 translocation involving the CMYC gene and immunoglobulin heavy chain locus. In the sporadic form, it may present as a mass in the abdomen or pelvis that doubles in size each day. So perhaps you had thought it was a gallbladder adenocarcinoma. Gallbladder adenocarcinoma mostly presents in the elderly population and is often asymptomatic until it has progressed to a clinically unfavorable stage, and it often results from unrelenting irritation of the gallbladder mucosa from gallstones. So continuing on, let's look at the main explanation here, and I'm glad to see we have some people who joined us. Hepatoblastoma is a primitive tumor that is the most common primitive primary liver tumor in young children, occurring most often before the age of 5. Typically, the rest of the child's liver is perfectly normal. These tumors are thought to arise from pluripotent stem cells and thus have the ability to form many types of tissues within the mass. Hepatoblastomas occur much more often in children who suffer from Beckwith-Wiedemann syndrome and familial adenomatous polyposis, or FAP, and thus screening for this malignancy may be regularly carried out in these conditions. Remember that alpha-fetoprotein levels are usually elevated in children with this tumor. This can be remembered by the fact that alpha-fetoprotein is thought to be the fetal version of albumin, and thus is produced in large quantities by the fetal liver. If the tumor is completely resectable, removal with adjuvant chemotherapy results in 100% survival. However, as some of the tumors invade into other tissues, some forms of hepatoblastoma have poorer prognosis. So there we have it, the answer from osmosis.org. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for everyone who is tuning in on Instagram too. I'll be back with another live broadcast for Med School Radio. Thanks very much. are again at Med School Radio. We are about to go live for a question on hepatoblastoma, an MCQ from osmosis.org. So let's go ahead and go live, and we're going to start this podcast. So welcome everyone. We are live here, podcast at Spreaker, also on Instagram. We're going to look at a question on hepatoblastoma from osmosis. So let's get right to it. A 2-year-old boy comes to the clinic because he hasn't been eating well for the past 2 weeks. His mother says that he has been sleeping much more lately and that he seems to get full after eating only a few bites of food. He has not traveled recently and he has had no sick contacts. Family history is significant for a total colectomy in his father when he was 16 years old. His 12-year-old first cousin has started getting yearly flexible sigmoid oscopies. His temperature is 38.1, pulse 86, respirations are 22. Cholangiocarcinoma.
As opposed to benign hepatitis.
My name is Carol. I'm 77 years old. I love to work with fabric and design. And my goal is that everyone in my family, my children, my grandchildren, and my great-grandchildren will all have a quilt.
She was my first true love. And several years later, we decided that we were going to get married on Carol's 18th birthday in 1950.
Carol's really a multi-talented person. She hunts, she fishes, if you look around the house, there's these big game heads on the wall. She was part of that. When she got sick, she says, "Oh, Edie, I can't die. I have so much else to do."
I had a lot of different symptoms, like feeling very sick in my stomach, and I had a lot of pain in my to the right in here, a lot of pain. And I'd tell my husband at night, "Bill, I think I'm dying. I'm so sick. I'm so sick."
We went to, I think, 5 different hospitals, 6 or 7 times over a period of a couple of months.
It was an emotional roller coaster. You know, these things always happen to someone else. They don't happen to you. I knew I was very sick, but I didn't know, if this was it or if I was going to live through this.
Typically what we do when people are referred to us for these unknown strictures is we get them to sign up for doing an endoscopic ultrasound and fine needle aspirations, look at the hilum, and at the same time we perform an ERCP and we proceed to doing a cholangioscopy. We did a fine needle aspiration around that stricture and we got some atypical suspicious cells, which made us think about obviously cholangiocarcinoma, but at that time the final pathology was not available. And there was always that hedging that what are we operating on? Is this a benign stricture? Is this really malignancy? So in spyglass we found a clear irregular appearing stricture with villous appearing structures within the bile duct, which is highly suspicious for tumor. We did multiple spyglass biopsies, and the final pathology came back as sclerosing adenocarcinoma, mucin secreting, confirming the diagnosis of cholangiocarcinoma.
It was really interesting because for one of the few times we were able to see that there was a diagnosis made. When you take a step back a few years, you realize that there was a time not too long ago that bile duct stenoses or strictures were really a diagnostic dilemma. Having the actual pathology, we get twofold. We get a sense of, is this tumor rapid growing or non-rapid growing? And then we know again that this is a tumor that if left alone, it's clearly going to become inoperable and take her life. Basically a death sentence with this kind of tumor.
When Dr. Cates came in and told us that, she had this thing, and her shock, the look on her face, like, what do you mean? It's very hard to hear somebody say that, without telling her she was...
Get beyond symptoms.
Food even tastes.
sort of the best moment of our career. We've never been more in demand than we are right now. We've been on a world tour for the last 3 years, basically. And we've just been on tour since Brain Drain.
I'm talking the Ramones right now. It's a coincidence, it just all happened.
When we met in the elevator, we all had the same message.
You never give your real names, but you don't want your mothers to be subjected to that.
Disgrace.
Yeah. How did you?
My mother just loved the country.
How did you get together?
We started like summer of 1974, and we grew up together, lived in the same block, we were friends. Something we always wanted to do.
A natural phenomenon.
Can you sing?
Yes, under there, it's on the right spot.
And by the way,
I was meaning to get a haircut.
Told me I looked good last week. Up with the, I was wearing that. Yeah, we do look
and
identical.
you do look
What the Ramones have been up to recently. Take the parent.
He left the band, Mr. President.
I knew that. Tough little piece of advice for you boys. Blitzkrieg Buck.
Be here, Mr. President.
Good question.
Yes, Adam. That's a...
No bickering. Let's get back.
Yeah, I thought it was a gel to it. You got the moose, right? Yeah, right. You know, but real serious. What, you straighten your hair or something? Did you?
No, I just let it grow long.
You look good. I mean, you do look good. This is the healthiest I've
He
ever
looks
seen.
very healthy.
I'm sober 7 months.
Yeah.
Where is my key chain? Where's my key chain?
You get a chip.
Joey, you obviously, you never made a secret about it. You had some problems with drugs and stuff. Drinking, is that what it was?
I didn't have a problem. I just enjoyed it.
You enjoyed it too much.
Now, you didn't go away to one of those
No,
clinics.
I have a lot of I have willpower.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I went away to 3 detoxes, and I've been straight for 6 years.
It took 3 times.
Yeah, it took me 3 shots at it. But I like to party.
Yeah, I know. Well, the Ramones
I mean,
like to
I
party,
know, you're blowing it out of proportion. I never had a problem.
Well, wait a second. Let's
Joe.
talk about this. Now, when you say you're sober 7 months, is that in a row?
Yeah.
7 months in a row?
Yeah.
Oh,
Not
well,
total, for his entire life.
Yeah, I didn't say, you know.
You don't fucking take it right now. And welcome back again to Med School Radio. This is Simon in Tokyo.